and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. My nose look funny. All right, now The Power of Thought, Chapter 1. If you haven't been here before and it's your first time ever showing up to a read of Think and Grow Rich on this channel specifically, what we're doing with this book here, Think and Grow Rich, is we are reading this every single day, every chapter, right? We're reading every chapter for a week straight. That gives you the opportunity to read the book, listen to the book along while I'm reading, take notes as you please, and then start adopting some of the things from the book as we have explained them. And then also gives us a chance to actually apply these things to our everyday life and start moving forward with these actions, right? Start moving forward with these actions, and then also gives us a chance to also have a little more actual discussion on the book, right? So this is day 4 of chapter 1, right? So this is our 4th time reading chapter 1 today. And without further ado, we're going to hop right into tonight's read, right? So for chapter 1, it goes, The Power of Thought. The man who thought his way into partnership with Thomas A. Edison. So, truly, thoughts are things, and powerful things at that. When mixed with purpose, persistence, and a burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. Edwin C. Barnes discovered how true it is that men really do think and grow rich. His discovery did not come about at one sitting. It came little by little, beginning with a burning desire to become a business associate of the great Thomas Edison. One of the chief characteristics of Barnes' desire was that it was definite. He wanted to work with Edison, not for him. Observe carefully the description of how he went about translating his desire into reality, and you have a better understanding of the 13 principles which lead to riches. When his desire or impulse of thought first flashed through his mind, he was in no position to act upon it. 2 difficulties stood in his way. He did not know Mr. Edison, and he did not have enough money to pay his rail fare to Orange, New Jersey. These difficulties were sufficient to have discouraged the majority of people from making any attempt to carry out their desire. But his was no ordinary desire. He was so determined to find a way to carry out his desire that he finally decided to travel on blind baggage rather than be defeated. He presented himself at Mr. Edison's laboratory and announced he had come to go into business with the inventor. In speaking of the first meeting between them, years later, Mr. Edison said, "He stood there before me, looking like an ordinary tramp, but there was something in the expression of his face which conveyed the impression that he was determined to get what he had come after." I had learned from years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he's willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of a wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. I gave him the opportunity he asked for because I saw he had made up his mind to stand by until he succeeded. Subsequent events proved that no mistake was made. Just what young Barnes said to Mr. Edison on that occasion was far less important than what he thought. Edison himself said so. It had not been the young man's appearance that got him his start in the Edison office, for that was definitely against him. It was what he thought that counted. If the significance of this statement could be conveyed to every person who reads it, there would be no need for the remainder of this book. Barnes did not get into his partnership with Edison on his first interview. He did get a chance to work in the Edison offices at a very nominal wage, doing work that was unimportant to Edison, but most important to Barnes. It gave him his opportunity to display his merchandise where his intended partner could see it. Months went by. Apparently nothing happened to bring the coveted goal, which Barnes had set up in his mind as his definite major purpose. But something important was happening in Barnes' mind. He was constantly intensifying his desire to become the business associate of Edison. Psychologists have correctly said, when one is truly ready for a thing, it puts in its appearance. Barnes was ready for a business association with Edison. Moreover, he was determined to remain ready until he got that which he was seeking. He did not say to himself, "Ah, well, what's the use? I guess I'll change my mind and try for a salesman's job." But he did say, "I came here to go into business with Edison, and I'll accomplish this end if it takes the remainder of my life." He meant it. What a different story people would have to tell if only they would adopt a definite purpose and stand by that purpose until it had the time to become an all-consuming obsession. Maybe young Barnes did not know it at the time, but his bold determination, his persistence with a single desire, was destined to mow down all opposition and bring him the opportunity he was seeking. When the opportunity came, it appeared in a different form and from a different direction than Barnes had expected. That is one of the tricks of opportunity. It is a sly habit of slipping in the back door and often comes disguised in the form of misfortune or temporary defeat. Perhaps this is why so many fail to recognize opportunity. Mr. Edison had just perfected a new office device known at the time as the Edison dictating machine, later called the Ediphone. His salesmen were not enthusiastic over the machine. They did not believe it could be sold without great effort. Barnes saw his opportunity. It had crawled quietly, hidden in a queer looking machine that interested nobody but Barnes and the inventor. Barnes knew he could sell the Edison dictator machine. He suggested this to Edison and promptly got his chance. He did sell the machine. In fact, he sold it so successfully that Edison gave him a contract to distribute and market it all over the nation. Out of that business association grew the slogan, made by Edison and installed by Barnes. This is business outlines made Barnes rich in money, but he accomplished something infinitely greater. He proved that one really may think and grow rich. How much actual cash that original desire of Barnes was worth to him, I have no way of knowing. Perhaps it brought him $2 or $3 million. Whatever the amount, it becomes insignificant when compared with the greater asset he acquired. The definite knowledge that an intangible impulse of thought can be transmuted into its physical counterpart by the application of known principles. Barnes literally thought himself into a partnership with the great Edison. He thought himself into a fortune. He had nothing to start with, except the capacity to know what he wanted and the determination to stand by that desire until he realized it. He had no money to begin with. He had but little education. He had no influence, but he did have initiative, faith, and a will to win. With these intangible forces, he made himself #1 man with the greatest inventor who ever lived. Now let us look at a different situation and study a man who had plenty of tangible evidence of riches, but lost it because he stopped 3 feet short of the goal he was seeking. And this was called 3 feet from gold, chap. So, one of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by a temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. R.U. Derby, who later became one of the most successful insurance salesmen in the country, tells the story of his uncle who was caught by the gold fever in the gold rush days and went west to dig and grow rich. He had never heard the saying that more gold has been mined from the brains of men than has ever been taken from the earth. He staked the claim and went to work with pick and shovel. The going was hard, but his lust for gold was definite. After weeks of labor, he was rewarded by the discovery of shining ore. He needed machinery to bring the ore to the surface. Quietly, he covered up the mine, retraced his footsteps to his home in Williamsburg, Maryland, and told his relatives and a few neighbors of the strike. They got together money for the needed machinery and had it shipped. The uncle and Darby went back to work the mine. The first car of ore was mined and shipped to a smelter. The returns proved they had one of the richest mines in Colorado. A few more cars of that ore would clear the depths. Then would come the big killings and profits. Down with the drills, up with the hopes of Darby and uncle. Then something happened. The vein of gold ore disappeared. They had come to the end of the rainbow, and the pot of gold was no longer there. They drilled on, desperately trying to pick up the vein again, all to no avail. Finally, they decided to quit. They sold the machinery to a junk man for a few $100s and took the train back home. Some junk men are dumb, but not this one. He called in a mine engineer to take a look at the mine and do a little calculating. The engineer advised that the project had failed because the owners were not familiar with fault lines. His calculations showed that the vein would be found just 3 feet from the Darbys had stopped drilling. That is exactly where it was found. The junk man took millions of dollars in ore from the mine because he knew enough to seek expert counsel before giving up. Most of the money which went into the machinery was procured through the efforts of R.U. Darby, who was then a very young man. The money came from his relatives and neighbors because of their faith in him. He paid back every dollar of it, although he was years in doing so. Long afterwards, Mr. Darby recouped his loss many times over when he made the discovery that desire can be transmuted into gold. The discovery came after he went to business of selling life insurance. Remember that he lost a huge fortune when he stopped 3 feet from gold. Darby profited by this experience in his chosen work, and his simple method was to say to himself, I stopped 3 feet from gold, but I will never stop because men say no when I ask them to buy insurance. It's a funny line. He owes his stickability to the lesson he learned from his quitability in the gold mining business. Before success comes to most people, they are sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When faced with defeat, the easiest, most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of people do. I got a burp. Thanks for the like. More than 500 of the most successful people America has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. I gotta sneeze. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony. I gotta sneeze and burp, but neither one are coming up. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. Takes great delight in tripping up one when success is almost within reach. And now, this one is called a 50-cent lesson in persistence. Shortly after Mr. Darby received his degree from the University of Hard Knocks and had decided to profit by his experience in the gold mining business, he had the good fortune to be present on an occasion that proved to him that no does not necessarily mean no. One afternoon, he was helping his uncle grind wheat in an old-fashioned mill. The uncle operated a large farm on which a number of sharecrop farmers lived. Quietly, the door was opened, and a small child, the daughter of a tenant, walked in and took her place near the door. The uncle looked up, saw the child, and barked at her roughly. "What do you want?" Meekly, the child replied, "My mammy says, send her 50 cents. "I'll not do it," the uncle retorted. "Now you run on home." "Yes, sir," the child replied, but she did not move. The uncle went ahead with his work so busily and engaged that he did not notice the child had not left. When he looked up and saw her still standing there, he yelled at her, "I told you to go on home. Now go, or I'll take a switch to you." The little girl said, "Yes, sir," but she did not budge an inch. The uncle dropped a sack of grain he was about to pour into the mill hopper, picked up a barrel stave, and started towards the child with an expression on his face that indicated trouble. Darby held his breath. He was certain he was about to witness a murder. He knew his uncle had a fierce temper. And when the uncle reached the spot where the child was standing, she quickly stepped forward one step, looked up into his eyes, and screamed at the top of her shrill voice, "My mammy's gotta have that 50 cents. The uncle stopped, looked at her for a minute, and then slowly laid the barrel stave on the floor, put his hand in his pocket, took out $50, and gave it to her. The child took the money and slowly backed towards the door, never taking her eyes off the man whom she had just conquered. After she had gone, the uncle sat down on a box and looked out the window into a space for more than 10 minutes. He was pondering, with awe, on the whipping he had just taken. Mr. Darby, too, was doing some thinking. That was the first time in all his experience that he had seen a child of a sharecropper deliberately master an adult authority figure. How did she do it? What happened to his uncle that caused him to lose his fierceness and become as docile as a lamb? What strange power did this child use that made her master over her superior? These and other similar questions flashed into Darby's mind, but he did not find the answer until years later, when he told me the story. Strangely, the story of this unusual experience was told to the author in the old mill, on the very spot where his uncle took his whipping. As we stood there in the old musty mill, Mr. Darby repeated the story of unusual conquest and finished by asking, "What can you make of it? What strange power did the child use that so completely whipped my uncle?" The answer to his question will be found in the principles described in this book. The answer is full and complete. It contains details and instructions sufficient to enable anyone to understand and apply the same force that a little child accidentally stumbled upon. Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book, you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command, for your own benefit, this same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash into your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in the form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure and defeat, and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. After I described to Mr. Darby the power unwittingly used by the child, he quickly retraced his 30 years of experience as a life insurance salesman. He frankly acknowledged that his success in that field was due, in no small degree, to the lesson he had learned from the child. Mr. Darby pointed out, every time a prospect tried to bow me out without buying, I saw that child standing there in the old mill with her big eyes glaring in defiance, and I said to myself, I've got to make this sale. The better portion of all sales I have ever made were made after people had said no. He recalled, too, his mistake and stopped only 3 feet from gold. But, he said, That experience was a blessing in disguise. It taught me to keep on keeping on, no matter how hard the going may be. A lesson I needed to learn before I could succeed in anything. This story of Mr. Darby and his uncle, the sharecropper's child, in the gold mine, will doubtlessly be read by hundreds of people who make their living by selling life insurance. To all of these, the author wishes to offer the suggestion that Darby owes to these two experiences: his ability to sell more than $1 million. Check the top, my battery, we should be fine. More than $1 million of life insurance every year, and life is strange, an offering, imponderable. Both the successes and the failures have their roots in simple experiences. Mr. Darby's experiences were commonplace and simple enough, yet, as he had the answer to his destiny in life, they were as important to him as life itself. He profited by these two dramatic experiences because he analyzed them and found the lesson they taught. But what of the person who has neither the time nor the inclination to study failure in search of knowledge that may lead to success? Where and how are they to learn the art of converting defeat into the stepping stone to opportunity? In answer to these questions, this book was written. There's a call for a description of 13 principles. However, remember as you read that the answer you may be seeking to the questions which have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind. Some idea, plan, or purpose may spring into your mind as you read. One sound idea is all you need to achieve success. The principles described in this book contain the best and most practical ways and means of creating useful ideas. Before we go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. This is an astounding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches only come to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire a state of mind that will attract riches. I spent 25 years in research analyzing more than 25,000 people because I, too, wanted to know how wealthy men become that way. Without that research, this book could not have been written. Here, take notice of a very significant truth. The business depression in 1929 and continued on an all-time record of destruction until sometime after President Roosevelt entered the office. Then depression began to fade into nothingness, just as an electrician in a theater raises the lights so gradually that darkness is transmuted into light before you realize it. So did the spell of fear in the minds of people gradually fade away and become faith. As soon as you master the principles of this philosophy and begin to follow the instructions for applying those principles, your financial status will begin to improve. Everything you touch will begin to transmute itself into an asset for your benefit. Impossible? Not at all. One of the main weaknesses of mankind is the average person's familiarity with the word impossible. He knows all the rules that would not work. He knows all the things that cannot be done. This book is written for those who seek the rules that have made others successful and are willing to stake everything on those rules. A great many years ago, I purchased a fine dictionary. The first thing I did was turn to the word impossible and neatly clip it out of the book. That would not be an unwise thing for you to do too. Success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those.
Motion detected at the G8V1GH02-3076FC4F.
Failure comes to those who are indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help all who seek it to learn the art of changing their minds from failure to success. Another weakness found altogether in too many people is the habit of measuring everything and everyone by their own impressions and beliefs. Some who read this will believe that no one can think and grow rich. They cannot think in terms of riches because their thoughts, habits have been steeped in poverty, want, misery, failure, and defeat. Millions of people look at achievements of Henry Ford and envy him for his good fortune, or luck, or genius, or whatever it is they created for Ford's fortune. Perhaps one person every 100,000 knows the secret of Ford's success, and those who do know are too modest or too reluctant to speak of it because of its simplicity. A single transaction will illustrate the secret perfectly. When Ford decided to produce his now famous V8 motor, he chose to build an engine with the entire 8-cylinder cast in one block, and instructed his engineers to produce a design for the engine, and the design was placed on paper, but the engineers believed it was impossible to cast an 8-cylinder gas engine into block in one piece. Ford said, produce it anyway. But they replied, it's impossible. Go ahead, Ford commanded. and stay on the job until you succeed, no matter how much time is required. The engineers went ahead, as there was no other option if they wanted to remain on the Ford staff. Battery's fine. 6 months went by and nothing happened. Another 6 months passed and still nothing happened. The engineers tried every conceivable plan to carry out the orders, but the thing seemed out of the question, impossible. At the end of the year, Ford checked with his engineers, and again they informed him that they had found no way to carry out his orders. Go right ahead, said Ford. I want it, and I'll have it. They went ahead, and then, as if by a stroke of magic, the secret was discovered. The Ford determination had won once more. This story may not be described with minute accuracy, but the sum of its substance of it is correct. Deduce from it, you who wish to think and grow rich. The secret of the 4 millions. If you can, you do not have to look very far. Henry Ford is a success because he understands all and applies the principles of success. One of these is desire, knowing what he wants. Remember this Ford story as you read, and pick out the lines in which the secret of his stupendous achievement has been described. If you can do this, you can lay your finger on this particular group of principles that made Henry Ford rich. You can equal his achievements in almost any calling for which you are suited. And now, it's an italicized text here. It says, the Henry Ford of late 20th century was Bill Gates. Just as Ford revolutionized the transportation industry by creating a car that almost anyone could afford and drive, Bill Gates transformed the computer industry by designing software that enabled everybody, not just specialized technocrats, to be able to use computers, and later making the personal computer a virtual necessity in every office, school, and home. This resulted in Bill Gates accruing billions of dollars and becoming the richest man in America. He first became entranced with computers and began programming them at the age of 13. In 1973, he entered Harvard University, where he lived down the hall from Steve Ballmer, now Microsoft Chief Executive Officer. While at Harvard, Gates developed a version of the programming language BASIC for the first microcomputer. Gates was so absorbed in his dream of building a software company that he left Harvard to devote his energies to fulfilling it. A few years earlier, he and his childhood friend Paul Allen had formed a company, Microsoft, as a vehicle for this endeavor. Guided by a belief that a computer would be a valuable tool on every office desktop and in every home, they began developing software for personal computers. Gates' foresight and his vision for personal computing had been central to the success of Microsoft and the software industry. Having achieved his major goal, Bill Gates continues to pursue new goals in both business of creating ever-improving computer programs and his philanthropic work, having founded with his wife, Melinda, the largest charitable foundation in the world. And now you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. When the English poet W.C. Henley wrote the prophetic lines, I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul, he should have informed us that the reason we are the master of our fate, the captains of our soul, is because we have the power to control our thoughts. He should have told us that the ether in which this little planet floats, in which we move and how our being is a form of energy, moving at an inconceivable high rate of vibration, and that the ether is filled with a form of universal power which adapts itself to the nature of thoughts we heard in our minds and influences us in natural ways to transmit our thoughts into physical equivalent. If the poet had told us this great truth, we would know why it is that we are the masters of our fate, the captains of our souls. He should have told us with great emphasis that this power makes no attempt to discriminate between destructive and constructive thoughts, that it will urge us to translate into physical reality thoughts of poverty just as quickly as influence us to act on thoughts of riches. He should have told us, too, that our brains become magnetized with dominating thoughts we heard in our minds. By means with which no one is familiar, these magnets attract to us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life, which harmonize with the nature of our dominating thoughts. He should have told us that before we can accumulate riches in great abundance, that we must magnetize our minds with intense desire for riches. We must become money conscious. Until the desire for money drives us to create definite plans for acquiring it. But being a poet, not a philosopher, Henry contented himself by stating a great truth in poetic form, leaving those who followed him to interpret the philosophical meaning of these lines. Little by little, the truth has unfolded itself. Until now, it appears certain that the principles described in this book hold the secret of mastery over our economic fate. And now, another man who exemplifies being master of his fate is Steven Spielberg. Let me check my battery real quick, chat. We still got time. Okay, cool. He dreamed of being a movie director from childhood, and he began making amateur films with a primitive camera when he was still a child, and the dream never subsided. How Spielberg broke into Universal Studios is a legend in the movie industry. He took the Universal Studios tour, an attraction that enables visitors to get an inside look at the movie business. Visitors ride around the studios on a tram, and Steven sneaked off the tram and hid between. What's up, Mason? Did you change your thing? Did you change your thing? Two sound stages until the tour ended. When he left at the end of the day, he made a point of saying a few words to the gate guard. Day after day, he went back to the studio for 3 months. He walked past the guard, waved at him, and he waved back. He always wore a suit and carried a briefcase. Later, the guard assumed he was one of the students with a summer job, bless you, in the studio. He made a point of speaking to and befriending directors, writers, and editors. He even found a vacant office, took it over, and listed his name in the building directory. He made it his business to get to know Sid Seinberg, then the head of production for the studio's television arm. He showed him his college film project, which so impressed Seinberg that he put the young man under contract with the studio. His first full-length film, The Sugar Land Express, received critical acclaim and won a Best Screenplay, awarded in the 1974 Cannes Film Festival. Unfortunately, though, it did not do very well at the box office. His big break came a year later when he discovered the book Jaws. The studio had already decided to produce Jaws and had chosen a well-known director to film it. Well, I'm reading Think and Grow Rich. We're reading chapter 1. I read it for a week straight. Oh, Spielberg desperately wanted to make this movie, despite the financial failure of Sugar Land Express. His self-confidence had not diminished, and he persuaded the producers to dismiss the chosen director and give the film to him. It was not an easy assignment. From the beginning, trouble beset the production. It ran into technical and budget problems. However, when Jaws was released in June 1975, it enjoyed twofold success. It broke box office records, and the critics loved it. Within a month of its release, the film had taken in $60 million at the box office, an unheard of amount at the time. Over the next few years, Spielberg directed several movies, including the popular Indiana Jones series, the award-winning The Color Purple, Empire of the Sun, and E.T. He later directed Jurassic Park, which would also become, at its time, the most successful movie in history, the third Spielberg film to break the record. It also brought in over $1 billion in gross receipts, toys, and other merchandise. Spielberg continues to pursue his dreams when he and two other Hollywood moguls curated their own production company. They called it DreamWorks. And now, at the very end here, let me check the battery so I'll make sure I get all the way to the end here. Yep, we're good. We're now ready to examine the first of these principles. Maintain a spirit of open-mindedness. Remember as you read that they are the invention of no single person. The principles were gathered from the life experiences of more than 500 men who actually accumulated riches in huge amounts. Men who began in poverty, with little education or influence. The principles worked for these men. You can put them to work for you, for your own enduring benefit. You will find it easy, not hard to do. Before you read the next chapter, I want you to know that it conveys factual information that might easily change your entire financial destiny. As it has, so definitely brought changes of stupendous proportions to two people described. I want you to know also that the relationship between these two men and myself is such that I could have taken no liberties with the facts, even if I had wished to do so. One of them has been my closest personal friend for almost 25 years, and the other is my own son. The unusual success of these two men, success that they generously accredit to the principle described in the next chapter, more than justifies this personal reference as a mean of emphasizing the far-flung power of this principle. In today's chat, I don't want to go over this too deeply. I just want us to go over one thing really fast. Just one thing that stands out extremely. That stood out as I was reading today. Nothing is impossible. And that's really all I got for you today. I've explained everything else in the other ones, in the other streams that we've done on chapter 1. And today is a different message. Nothing is impossible. And I really want you to remember that. I really want you to take that to heart. Like, truly take that to heart, right? That nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible, right? I really want you to truly take that to heart. We just read about 4 or 5 people who somebody would have told them their dream was impossible, right? They would have told them that what they were going after was impossible. Henry Ford, before he made the one of the greatest, one of the groundbreakingest cars that ever existed, was told it was impossible several times by his engineers, but he never believed that it was impossible, right? So let's remember that nothing is impossible. Everything is achievable, and the only time it's not possible is because it hasn't happened yet. It is bound to happen eventually, right? So let's actually take that genuinely to heart tonight, that nothing is impossible. And that is all we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to keep it simple tonight. Keep it short, sweet, and simple tonight. Let's remember that nothing is impossible. And that is how we're going to wrap up today's stream, chat. Now, I'm going to hit y'all with this outro, and I'm going to remind you that we're going to be reading Think and Grow Rich every single day for a week, every chapter for a week straight, so we can take notes, start applying the principles, and then move forward with the chapters as a group, you know. So we're going to read every single chapter for a week straight before we move on to the next chapter, so we can start applying the principles to our own lives, right? And now, let's hit this outro, chat. We're gonna get that limitless score, baby. I appreciate you. I might even love you, but I'm for sure glad you woke up today. Thank you for joining me for another stream on the channel. And thank you for all the love y'all been showing me for the past couple of days, for the past month, to be honest. We broke records on this month on the channel. You know, we really broke records this month on the channel, like records for the channel so far, definitely. So I really appreciate y'all. I'm just extremely grateful for all y'all, for real. Thank you for your presence. It's always appreciated. And I'm gonna see you next time on the next stream on the channel. Peace.